Well, good morning, Seaside United Methodist Church. It's Thursday morning, and I am sitting out on my porch doing some work today, enjoying this lovely morning. What a great day to go out and do some work in the yard or take a walk. What a great day to be reminded of God's goodness in creation and God's goodness in our lives. You know, this isn't the first time that God's church has faced some difficult circumstances. In fact, it seems as though as we look back on church history, there were always opportunities to grow through obstacle. It dawned on me yesterday that we share a lot of similarities with the early church in Rome, the rise of Christianity that occurred during that time period. You know, during the early church, historians believe there was a 40% growth in Christianity every decade. Think about that. 40%. Our world's population, 40%, that would be such a huge number of growth each decade, wouldn't it? Well, we have the opportunity, even though we are quarantined, even though we're keeping our social distancing, that's sort of the new phrase now, right? We have the opportunity to grow God's church. I want to share with you what our church looks like today and what that early church looked like and how we might learn some lessons from them. The first thing I'd like to point out is in the Roman Empire, this is the first time the world had really been connected by a good system of roads. Roads are something we take for granted, and in fact, we're being told to stay off the roads as much as possible, right? But because of the elaborate road system of the Roman government, Christianity spread. It spread because people like Paul were able to travel and start churches. It spread because Christians who were in trading were able to go to other villages and under their trade and share the gospel as they were living in the system of commerce and trade. Christians during that time also tended to be middle to upper class, believe it or not. Some people think that the early church was full of a bunch of poor people, but that wasn't necessarily the case in most areas. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because it means that those Christians had resources that they were able to share with others. I know that those of you watching this have probably cover a broad spectrum of financial resources. Some of us have plenty to share, and others of us maybe not so much. Yet each of us has something that we can give, whether it be a financial gift or whether it be the gift of prayer. Just as those early Christians were blessed with resources to share, so too have we been blessed to be a blessing. I'd also like to point out that during this time in the church, there was, believe it or not, a plague happening in the Roman Empire. Who would have thought, right? Now, most people, because they didn't know science, they didn't know medicine, what would they do? Well, they fled the cities. They fled out to the countryside to avoid getting sick. They would just leave their sick family members behind. Parents would leave children behind. Children would leave parents. Husbands would leave wives. It didn't really matter. It was all about self-preservation. But not the Christians. The Christians stayed. The Christians stayed and tended to the needs of the sick. They prayed for the sick. This, of course, drew a lot of people to Christianity because they saw God's love on display. A side note, the Christians also tended to get the plague and die at a lower rate. Now, that's not because God magically protected them or anything like that, but it's because the Christian morals and ethics they had drawn from the Judeo-Christian values actually just produced cleaner living. They were living in ways that were remarkably different than the pagans, and you can Google that for yourself, but because of that, disease did not spread as rampantly through the Christian community. And so there was almost this sense of, wow, these Christians, not only are their spiritual lives different, but even their physical lives are turning out different than the pagans. And that was a draw to people. Not to mention that the Christians in the middle of this plague, they were able to offer hope. Hope that should the worst happen and you contract the plague and die, there was hope in life eternal. You see, their message wasn't focused on the here and now. It was focused on the day of resurrection, when God would heal all bodies and bring everybody into life anew. And finally, the Christian church grew not through mass conversion, not through arenas and football stadiums. We see the day of Pentecost that thousands came to know Christ through the gospel, but that's not how the church grew after that. It grew through one-on-one relationships. Now, we're told today not to gather in groups higher than 10, and perhaps that's even changed since I checked this morning. Isn't that interesting that the early church didn't need large groups to spread the gospel? All they needed was one-on-one relationships. So what can we learn from the early church? Well, I want to be very clear about something that I've said. I said the Christians stayed behind and tended to the sick. Obviously, by no means am I saying that we should be, barging into the homes of people with COVID-19 and serving as their nurses. We're not equipped to do that. That's not safe for us to do. That's not safe for them to do. However, being present for those in need is still something we can do. And it can be done in small ways. Do you have a neighbor that lives alone? Call her and see if she's got enough food. Do you know of a friend that was already dealing with depression before this hit and now he's totally isolated? Maybe knock on his door just to do a wellness check. Of course, we want everybody to be smart and keep themselves safe because we can't help anybody if we ourselves are sick. But there are ways, without social interaction in person or without, again, going to the bedsides of infected people, there are ways that we can be the church, that we can grow the church. When you see something posted online that's inspiring, share it online. When you read something from the Gospel of Mark that strikes you, post it on our website. The church, we've put up a digital sticky note page where you can make comments and share with your church family. And of course, keep praying. Prayer is the most effective tool we have to get through all of this. Keep in contact with your Creator. Bring your concerns to God. Don't hide them. God knows they're there anyway. So bring them to God and allow God to dissipate them. Allow the Holy Spirit to show you the little ways that you can be a part of spreading the church. Perhaps the word spreading isn't the best word during a global pandemic, but maybe it's actually the right word. I don't know. But take heart. This is not the end of the church. It's not the end of Seaside, and it's not the end of God's church. As Francis reminded us in his sermon on Sunday, we've been promised that nothing will bring an end to the church. And in fact, perhaps we will find this time to be a time of great growth. My friends, offer the world hope and peace during this time of fear and anxiety. Show the world Christ's love through your words, through your actions, through your interactions. And may the grace and peace of Jesus Christ be with you today.